It says you can help Christians in the CAR, which stands for Central African Republic. And I meant to look up and see what country that used to be, because that's not a name that I recognize, which countries in Africa change their name, like some of them changed their socks.
I didn't think most people there had socks.
Well, it depends, I suppose. You can help the Christians in the CAR who have been driven from their homes because of their faith. And then it talks about giving them a gift, a financial gift. And I actually read in the prayer guide that came in about the Central African Republic is one of the most vicious places for persecution and violence against Christians. And that kind of reminds me, we were watching a show today.
Oh, yeah.
And this isn't current. This was talking about Rwanda back in '94 when they had the genocide there. And they were brutal.
Oh, my goodness. 800,000 people were killed.
And most of them by machetes.
Yeah. They would cut their Achilles tendon so that they couldn't run. And then they would just proceed to hack them up and kill them. So sad.
And that wasn't Christian persecution, because it was two different sects in Rwanda.
Right.
And it was more about the ethnic background than it was religion.
Right.
I believe is the way that would work. But we do know that many places couldn't do what we're doing right now. Even in the Seinfeld section, or especially in the later prayer time, they couldn't do really what we're doing right now, because eventually we'll probably say something about the government, and
no,
that'll get people in big trouble in some countries.
We will?
Well, maybe.
Not us.
Well, I think Bill and Tanya would probably be disappointed if we didn't mention something about the government.
No.
And I'm glad they're here so we can blame them for most everything that happens.
Well, it's their fault. Last show, everything was their fault, too.
It was. We just didn't even make that up.
Absolutely not. Oh, there's Tim Reynolds.
Tim Reynolds. Isn't that the Mr.
Mr. Cookbook?
We have a celebrity in our midst.
In the room.
Tim Reynolds.
If you're not following him on TikTok, that's the man to follow.
Well, that's where I was going to go. I think, and he can correct us if we're wrong, if he's actually watching and didn't just
come in and go back out.
I think that he has somewhere in the neighborhood of 800,000 followers.
Absolutely.
That's an 8 and 5 zeros after it. 800,000. And he is got a cookbook that is getting ready to be released anytime. And so why does Tim Reynolds have 800,000 followers on TikTok?
Because he does cast iron cooking, and I wouldn't know because he's never made anything and brought in to share with me. So I don't know whether he's cooking is good, but it sure looks good.
And he does amazing things with the cast iron skillets.
Oh my goodness, he can do anything in a cast iron skillet. He can cook anything you ask for in a cast iron skillet.
That's not what I meant.
But he can take them and restore them.
Yes.
He can take the rustiest, ugliest, old, nastiest cast iron skillet and restore it back to brand new looking. It's amazing.
Probably better than brand new.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've seen some pictures that you showed me. And
yeah. He's awesome. The cast iron guy, or the cast iron, what's it called on? Hang on, I'll tell you. I don't even know if I got TikTok on my tablet.
It was right there.
Was it? Oh, it is. I will tell you.
And he does all of that, which is a job in itself. When you get to the point where you have 800,000 followers on any social media, it's a job.
The cast iron skillet guy.
The cast iron skillet guy. Skillet queso, is that what it says? Well, he handled. Do you see him flipping?
I know, that's his trademark. Just where he spins it. Cast iron guy. The cast iron guy on TikTok. The cast iron guy. And he can make anything. Yeah, spinning the skillet, that's his trademark.
So, he's famous for cooking and for restoring cast iron both.
Yep, he's amazing.
So,
the cast iron guy.
There's a little commercial for you, buddy.
There you go.
You made it into the share portion of the show too, so.
And he's got this upcoming cookbook coming up, and he's taking orders for them now. And if you want one, you're interested in it, let me know. Oh my goodness, some of the stuff he makes.
Blackberry cobbler in a cast iron
Does that not
skillet.
look good?
Man. Okay, thank you for being with us tonight. We're going to go find. Well, no, okay.
We're going to send a bill to Tim. Oh my goodness, look at that ham. Strawberry shortcake. Strawberry cheesecake in a skillet. Pumpkin snickerdoodle cookies. Okay, I'm over you, Tim. I'm hungry. We just got done eating.
So, let's talk about, where did it go? How liberals, see, we're going to get to government right off the bat here. And so, did Bill and Tanya say anything about politics?
They said they have broad shoulders.
Okay. Let me.
Well, there's a commercial out loud.
There. Liberal pundits, that would be those in the media, melt down after Enema, which is a Democrat senator.
Well, they got part of it right, the enema.
Well, but she doesn't follow the liberals in lockstep, and that's why the liberal pundits melted down, because she refuses to support the change in the filibuster rule, and they need all 50 of the senators on the Democrat side because it's a tie. And anyone that doesn't go with them, unless they get a Republican to flip, nothing can pass. So they're mad at her. And get this, she doesn't follow in lockstep. So their demand, I was going to say suggestion, their demand is resign or be removed from office.
Wow.
So there you have.
They're turning on their own.
Either follow us or we're going to fire you, basically. Liberal pundits melted down, this was last week, after Senator Kyrsten Sinema, 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 Democrat from Arizona, said she will not vote to weaken the Senate's 60-vote filibuster threshold, bucking her party leaders yet again and dealing a major blow to Democrats' election reform efforts. There's no need for me to restate my long-standing support for the 60-vote threshold to pass legislation. There's no need for me to restate its role in protecting our country from wild reversals of federal policy. And so it's not like she's changed her tune on this.
Right.
It's been the way she wanted it. I mean, she's been, not the way she wanted it, but she's been very consistent with her thoughts on that particular topic. And she and Manchin, Manchin, M-A-N-C-H-I-N, senator from West Virginia, Democrats hate them both because they vote their conscience. And, yeah, they don't like that. Enema is effectively asking the authors of Jim Crow and vote rigging to give their permission for her to stop it. This is worse than incoherent or cowardice. It's a moral disgrace. Ask the segregationists for permission to vote for a Civil Rights Act.
Wow.
That was what one person said. And this guy gets on my nerves so bad. If you know who Keith Olbermann is, I used to like this man before I knew anything about his political leanings. He was actually one of the hosts of SportsCenter way back when SportsCenter first came out. Now he is a liberal talking head that makes you want to vomit.
Wow.
I say this as her former friend. So they're not friends anymore because she does.
Former.
As her former friend and the person who first gave her national television exposure on MSNBC. At Senator.
How dare you, Bill and Tanya? You did it again.
Needs to resign or be removed from office immediately. I'd like to know under what grounds they can remove her from office. She has
because she isn't in lockstep with them.
I guess Democrats don't believe in free will, apparently.
Evidently. We got Loretta Fox in the house.
Hey, Loretta. She had me give you a big hug. I just told you I didn't give you the big hug.
He didn't do it.
I told her.
He said, not even physically, don't touch me. I want the real thing.
Loretta, I hope you've gotten some rest this week. She worked 100 hours last week.
That's what I heard. Stop it. That'll make an old lady out of you. Look at me.
You said look at you, so I looked at you. So lockstep.
What's that tell you?
Well, you know.
What country are we living in?
Well, fortunately, it's still the United States of America where it is legal to not march along with the liberal orders of the day.
Legal, but look what it's getting her. They're threatening to resign or be removed. What choice does she have?
Continue doing what she's doing.
Stand up for what's right.
That is
but you know what? It's going to get you. You're going to lose your job anyway. But stand up for what's right.
Absolutely. That's the way our government is supposed to work. Because if it worked the way liberals wanted it to work, after the elections, one party could take off till the next election because they ain't got a say.
Well, it's just like the whole and I know that we're back to beating this dead horse, and this horse is definitely dead. The vaccination mandate. I've told people over and over and over again, do not quit your job for fear that they're going to fire you. Force them to fire you. Force them to do it. Force them. Because now look, how many people have either left a job or they've said, you got to go, and now they've turned around and changed that whole thing because it wasn't even a legal issue that they could enforce to begin with.
Absolutely.
And it's so sad that it's come down to that.
Do you think you've heard it all?
Oh, heavens no.
But you're old enough that
you think you've heard it all until
the leftist writer calls for... I promise you, nobody in the world could make this up. Leftist writer calls for parenthood to be abolished to achieve equity. Says your children should be given to homeless neighbors or to the state. See, ain't nobody in the whole world stupid enough to write that except for this one guy.
Read that again. Because I sure did not hear that right.
I'll do it slow because if you didn't catch it, I'm sure some people out there didn't catch it. Leftist writer calls for parenthood to be abolished to achieve equity. Says your children should be given to homeless neighbors or to the state. You know, I had to read that.
Homeless. Give your kids to the nearest homeless person.
Abolish parenthood.
Let your kids live under a bridge with the nearest homeless people.
The outlandish proposal was presented in an article published in the opinion section of the Ventura County Star, a daily newspaper published in California.
Oh, well, there you go. Land of the fruits and nuts.
The publication is owned by Gannett, which is one of the major news services in the entire country. Gannett owns hundreds of newspapers and media sources. Yeah, if I'd read the rest of the sentence, the largest newspaper company in the United States.
And they were stupid enough to print that?
One of their many newspapers did. The article titled, "California Should Abolish Parenthood in the Name of Equity."
Oh my gosh.
Oh, and get it was also republished by Yahoo in its news section. You know, if this guy was a terrorist or something, I wouldn't. But I want to name his name because I want everybody to know who this stupid person is. The author of the piece is Joe Matthews, a co-president of the Global Forum on Modern Direct Democracy, which is dedicated to those active on issues of direct democracy, participation, and citizens' rights around the world.
Democracy.
Well, yes.
Demon. Like as in demon?
That's what it should say. There's
Democracy.
no N. Hey, Joe, there's no N in democracy. And hey, Joe, the United States is not a democracy, but it is a democratic republic.
Absolutely. Are you kidding me?
See,
I cannot even imagine.
People are
like, what in the world did we just hear? I mean, how insane is that? Just have all the kids you want and then give them to all the homeless people. Don't worry about childless people. I mean, if he's wanting you to give your kids away, homeless are the last people you would think that you would give them to. Wouldn't you give them to childless?
Well,
childless couples?
Homeless neighbors. I don't have any homeless neighbors, so what do I do with my kids?
Homeless neighbors.
Everybody around here has a house.
Right. How is that?
Well,
how would you have a homeless neighbor?
I guess that if you live down close to the bridge.
I mean, well, that's stereotyping, but how would you have a homeless neighbor?
Well, speaking of stereotyping, and this has nothing to do with anything in the world.
Oh my heavens, that is the most idiotic thing I've ever heard. Is this stupider than that?
It's stupid, but
I don't think you could get stupider than that.
I don't think you can.
I honest to goodness don't.
We live in Bartholomew County. Columbus, Indiana is in Bartholomew County, and there's a Facebook group called If You Grew Up in Bartholomew County, and it's a really good group. People put things in there from the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, you know, always some kind of memory in that group that you can relate to. Well, somebody put, they usually ask a question like, who remembers, and then fill in the blank.
Right.
So this person said, who remembers when gypsies used to migrate into town and then leave shortly after?
Traveled in like wagons and they would come in a pack and they would
And you know quite a bit about that.
I do.
Because your dad, didn't he have to take some kind of special training?
He took training on gypsies, and it was very, very, very interesting. He went to a different state and actually took in-depth training on traveling gypsies.
Now, seemed to be a harmless question. It was something that actually did happen. It wasn't no made-up story. And somebody got upset and called them racist.
Yeah, sure did.
For calling them gypsies.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. What do you call a gypsy other than gypsy?
Gypsy?
Oh, Cher called them gypsies, tramps, and thieves.
Right. I mean,
but here's what they said.
Somebody said a vagabond. I don't know. Gypsies. That's what they call themselves.
I was going to say, I would guess if they pulled up in front of your house and you went outside and talked to them, they would say, we're gypsies.
That's what they called themselves. They're gypsies.
World
travelers. That's what I've heard. A lot of people that refer to themselves as world travelers that wouldn't necessarily be referred to as a gypsy.
Now, let's take this a step further, and the person that said that it was racist took it a step further. What were, at that point in time, I don't know today what they do or where they're at or if they even exist, but at that point in time, we're talking probably the 60s and the 70s, what were gypsies known to do?
They had light fingers. They like to steal things.
Steal! They were friggin' thieves.
They were thieves.
And I would guess that if you were to talk to them, they would tell you that they were thieves.
They were thieves.
They were con artists. They were thieves.
Well, let me give you a little bit of background. When my dad took this training in this other state, gypsies traveled in multiple cars, or they would travel in like a pack in multiple vehicles. And officers, when they would stop a vehicle that was gypsies, every car in that group would stop. And instantly they would get out of everybody that was in the whole car, in the cars of that group, they would all get out and start changing clothes, so that it was confusing to the officer that stopped them. He would have trouble identifying who was in what car and what they had on, so that when he went, if he had any kind of an arrest, he would have a hard time identifying who was the driver of what car, who was the passengers of what car, what they had on, because they would start changing clothes. And he would have, it was a difficult time to see who wore what. It was part of their con game, because that was a confusion thing. So officers in states where gypsies prevalently traveled, why is my tablet acting stupid? It just all of a sudden flipped. So gypsies in towns towns where gypsies normally travel, officers will carry, and this sounds really strange, and honest to goodness, this is the training that he took back years ago when he went, would carry like a house broom, like a broom, that you'd sweep the floor with, in their vehicles. When they got out of the car and people started jumping out of the car, the officer would take this broom, sweep it on the ground, and hold it up towards their faces. These people would stop dead still, because from here up is considered their holy area. And they didn't want anything dirty that touched the ground to touch their holy area. So they would stop doing whatever they're doing. And it would get everybody in the group to stop. And that's how they would be able to get everybody to stop. They wouldn't necessarily need to pull a weapon on them, because that didn't mean anything to them. But you try to touch them with something that touched the ground, they would stop moving. And so that's how they would do it. So they would carry brooms in their cars to control these. But they would go through towns years ago. I doubt that they do that now. But they would go through towns and they would travel. And moms would take their sons or daughters or whatever, kids, and they would go up to a house and they would knock on the door, and whoever came to the house would say, we're going through town, our car broke down, can my child use your bathroom? They'd go into the house and they'd put their child in the bathroom, and they would unlock like bathroom windows or whatever, and then they would come back that next night and they would go in through that unlocked bathroom window, and they would break in, and they would steal what they could steal, and then they would get back out that window.
And do what thieves do.
Absolutely. They do what thieves do. But that's what gypsies did back years ago.
See, it goes along with all kind of topics that happened in our childhood, maybe even farther back, maybe as we grew into being adults, that gypsies are gypsies.
Yeah, it's not a racist statement. It's a factual statement.
And so, but you can't say that today. How many things are off limits, talking-wise, that is just what part of the normal conversation was back in the day?
Right.
Now, I'm not talking about the N-word and things like that. I'm just talking...
Those aren't even appropriate.
Right. I'm talking about just things that were common, everyday words, sentences, phrases.
Well, it's just like if you were talking about a pirate. What is there about a pirate that would be degrading or bad? Pirates wore one earring and a bandana on their head and
an eye patch and had a peg leg.
Yeah, that's just what they did. That's what they were. Pirates were drunkards, and they usually were the boss of everybody, and it's no different. It's just what they did. The same as a gypsy. That's just what they did. That's what they were.
If they lived today and traveled today and did their gypsy thing today, and you wanted to call them world travelers, that's up to you. Don't force me, and don't take away what they were. Don't rewrite history. They were gypsies, and most gypsies in that time, at least, I won't say most, but many of them were thieves. You get, the Bible tells us that you're judged by the fruit you bear.
Yeah.
Well, the gypsies, the fruit that they bore was that they stole things.
Right. Mary said that they call them gypsies over in Paris by the Eiffel Tower, and that they warn them about their tactics.
Well, speaking of tactics, that's a good segue right there. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Mary.
For segueing us into another political topic.
Oh,
Get
no,
this.
more politics.
The President of the United States has proclaimed Religious Freedom Day 2022. And why? Because he can. It says, "Now therefore I, Joseph R. Biden Jr., President of the United States of America, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the Constitution. I think that's just a fancy way of saying because I can.
Because I can.
Do hereby proclaim, oh, this already passed. January the 16th, 2022. I guess that would have been Sunday, right? This is the 18th? Yeah.
Yeah.
As Religious Freedom Day.
Well, wasn't that nice of him?
However, the writer of this article says, we've all heard that actions speak louder than words. Benjamin Franklin famously said, well done is better than well said. And Christian preacher Charles Spurgeon once said, it is well to preach as I do with my lips, but you can all preach with your feet and by your lives, and that is the most effective preaching. Don't do as I say, do as I do. So what do Biden's actions show?
Well, Bill and Tanya said they have religious freedom every day.
Oh, not just this last Sunday?
Not just Sunday, every day. And Mary said, well, that was well publicized, wasn't it?
So what do Biden's actions show? Here are 10 examples from his presidency so far. And this is CBN News. And guess what they do? They just put links to 10 articles. So they got headlines here. I won't click on any one of these, but just listen to the headlines. Number 1, appalled as thousands of Nigerian Christians get slaughtered, Biden admin drops Nigeria from Freedom Watch list. And we know a little bit about Nigeria. That's where Dr. Egwu is from and talked to us about. Number 2, leaked HHS memo reveals Biden administration to seek Americans to strip, not seek, to strip Americans of religious protections. Number 3, watchdog warns Biden administration appears to be creating a database of Americans who ask for religious exemptions. Number 4, nurses forced to help with abortions. GOP lawmakers say HHS secretary sabotaging federal conscience protections. Number 5, Biden administration looks to revoke Trump-era religious freedom protections. Number 6, a profound miscarriage of justice. DOJ lets hospitals off the hook after it forced pro-life nurses to assist in abortions. Number 7, these Biden priorities target religious liberty. Number 8, Tennessee Children's Charity sues Biden administration for trying to force them to violate their Christian beliefs. Number 9, Biden administration to scrap focus on religious freedom in favor of abortion, LGBTQ activism. So we're going to scrap religious freedom and we're going to favor abortion and LGBTQ activism. And number 10, religious groups seek emergency Supreme Court relief, call Biden's vaccine mandate authoritarian. So, thus, the reason there is only one Religious Freedom Day, because the other 364, they're screwing the religious freedom.
That's so sad.
And that's just 10 that they listed. That's 10 that came from their own website and their own stories. We could literally come up with hundreds of stories. And if every news outlet, like the one who has a writer who wants to abolish Parenthood, was to post these kind of things, there would be millions of stories that we could tell you about. Boy, once we got onto the share part, we just rock and rolled right here. I still got, let me just read some headlines. I'm going to save that. Maybe I'll go to that at the end. Christian photographer appeals New York law that forces her to work LGBT weddings despite religious objections. Your pastor cares for you, cares when you don't care. 4,000 North American pastors unite against Canada's new LGBTQ conversion therapy law, warn that it will criminalize Christianity. Thousands of pastors across North America have reportedly come together to protest Bill C-4, a Canadian law that took effect January the 8th after reportedly being pushed through Parliament with little debate. The claim is that Bill C-4 is broadly worded and could, in effect, ban biblical teaching on sexual ethics and impact even personal communication on the subject. Preachers are protesting the law at the pulpit, with 4,000 pastors affirming their opposition as well as willingness to speak out against it. Wow. A preacher by the name of, John MacArthur of Grace Community Church in Los Angeles is vocal against that law. And he said, I think it's reached a level there in Canada that hasn't reached here yet, but it's coming. It's coming fast. Things like that we've talked about for years and years, and preachers in the past I've heard say, well, if they do that, they'll have to take me to jail. They may find out whether or not they were serious or not.
Absolutely. See how committed pastors like that are.
Well, think about it. The mandates and things are almost like a trial run on how far that they can push people.
Right.
Let's go back to this. I'm a big fan of Pastor Greg Laurie. Very, very down-to-earth person. He's just an all-around good guy. His theology is, I've not seen anything that I would say, I don't agree with that. And you don't always hear that. I mean,
right.
There's a lot of preachers that I like most of their things, but sometimes they come up with something that I'm a little apprehensive of, and I haven't found that with Greg Laurie. But he wrote, and I'll just read a little because of time. We were all shocked and saddened to hear of the passing of Bob Saget at age 65. To the generation who grew up watching Full House, Bob was a father figure they came to love. Yet another generation discovered him as host of America's Funniest Home Videos. And he talks about how that was on the heels of the death of beloved comic actress Betty White, who died at age 99. And where does he talk about Norm Macdonald? Oh, there it is. Betty White and Saget were not the only comedians to think about the afterlife. In September of 2021, Norman Macdonald died of cancer at age 61. And so Laurie's question was, or his statement is, let me just say this again. I was getting it. I read this a couple of days ago. So Bob Saget had said in an interview, I don't know what happens after we die. Now, Greg Laurie says, death is something we all think about almost every day, some more than others, we should think deeply about death, but more importantly, the afterlife. He says the phrase that was commonly put on top of documents way back was Memento Mori, which means think of death. The phrase sounds morbid on the surface, but it's not. It served as a reminder to be aware that life ends, eternity is close, and there is an afterlife. Now, afterlife, I think, makes people think of ghosts and hocus pocus, and that's not what it means at all.
No.
But he goes on to talk about Norm Macdonald. Macdonald quietly fought his cancer battle and continued in his comedy work. He often spoke about the afterlife and heaven. Larry King interviewed him once and asked Macdonald about his religious views in an interview. "I'm a Christian," Macdonald replied. "It's not stylish to say that now." Larry King asked, "Are you devout? You believe in the Lord?" "Yes, I do," Macdonald said. Larry did not know he was interviewing a man facing death every day in his fight with cancer. He then asked Macdonald, "You think that you're going somewhere when life ends?" Norm said he did. Larry said he could not believe in an afterlife because of all the evil in the world. Norm responded, "It sounds like you have a God-shaped hole in your heart."
Wow.
Larry did, and we all do. Norm Macdonald once posted these words: "Scripture, faith, grace, Christ, glory of God. Smart man says nothing is a miracle. I say everything is." That sums it up perfectly. There is an afterlife. And I like the article because Greg Laurie did not speak any of those three into heaven, and he didn't condemn any of them to hell.
Absolutely.
And that's what a lot of people are guilty of. Oh, he did this, 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 and this. He can't be in heaven. That's the Christian side too many times. And then the non-Christian side is, look at that hypocrite. Well, we've all sinned.
Absolutely.
And now we all need to head to the prayer part of the... Did you have anything you wanted to add or anything anybody said in there that...
No.
You got silent. I guess, when we talked about abolishing Parenthood and then the irony of Religious Freedom Day.
I just don't know. I'm still so stuck on the abolishing Parenthood and then giving our kids to our homeless neighbors. It's just so shocking. If that's the case, wouldn't that make the homeless neighbors new parents? And that's just transferring the parenthood from the actual parent to the homeless neighbor and making them a parent. And then that doesn't abolish parenthood. That's just transferring the rights from one parent to a homeless parent. I mean, that's like selling them. It's like, selling a candy bar from the store owner to the customer, except it's a child from a parent to a homeless person.
Or the government.
Or the government. I forgot about that part of it. That was just, the whole story was so stupid, I forgot about the government part. Just give them to the state.